Hi there, welcome back to Posture Labs and Alignment Fundamentals. My name is Emma. Thank you so much for joining. Today we are on episode 10 and we are going to cover pyramid pose. So I have a block here. You might like to grab a block or not. Keep in mind that a lot of these poses, there are multiple correct ways to do a pose based on the lineage. So for example, the Bikram way versus the Ashtanga way of doing pyramid pose are going to be a little bit different. I will try to give you all these different variations so you can practice the pose, how it works best for you. However, knowledge is power, so it's better to know that, your teacher is not necessarily wrong just because they're teaching it a different way than I am, and I'm not necessarily wrong than another video on YouTube. So there's lots of different ways to do these poses depending on kind of the lineage of where it came from and the style of yoga that you're doing. For pyramid pose, we will be standing ideally on, I like to say, railroad tracks. You can do heel to heel alignment. That's a little bit more the Ashtanga way. However, I think feet on railroad tracks is a little bit more accessible for most people, just because then you feel a little bit less wobbly. It's easier to square the hips forward. So I'm going to teach you feet on railroad tracks, but just know that if heel to heel alignment feels better for you, by all means go for that. Now, for your pyramid pose, we generally would either get in from standing or maybe from like a runner's lunge. I'll show you from both. From standing, I want your feet maybe about 3 feet or a meter apart, feet on railroad tracks. Now, your back toes, for me, we're starting on the left side. So for me, the right toes are going to be pointing out at a 45-degree angle, and the left toes are pointing directly forward. So I kind of have this diagonal line being drawn. Now, I still want to square the hips forward, so I'm going to bring my hands to my waist and square my hips over my left leg. I'm going to squeeze my right glute to help do that. Now, your arm placement doesn't matter so much. Ashtanga way, you're going to do reverse namaskar, prayer hands behind you. For the purpose of this video, we're just going to bring our hands to our waist as we forward fold. I like a little bend in the front knee to keep from hyperextending. Let's take an inhale. Exhale, start to fold over your left leg. You'll start to feel a stretch through the back of your left hamstring. Press the ball of your foot down. Once you get to that place where you're feeling that stretch, you can bring your hands down to the mat or blocks. At this point, feel free to adjust your back foot if you feel like it needs to go back a little bit farther or inch up a little bit closer. I see a lot of people, beginners especially, starting with a really short stance, like a 1-foot stance. So really try to make sure you're feeling that stretch through the back of your left hamstring, and feel free to bend your front knee if you need to. Think more about keeping this back right leg nice and straight, and bending the left knee is totally fine as you're learning. You're still going to feel this nice stretch through the back of your leg. Now think about folding over your left leg. So I want to try to drive the right hip forward and kind of drop the right side of my torso a little bit. So almost like a little twist over the left thigh. Now you can choose to walk your hands forward. Again, feel free to use blocks. You can also choose to walk your hands back. Either way is great. For me, I'm feeling more of a stretch walking the hands back, and I feel a little bit more control with the hands forward. So it just depends what feels best for you. Now, again, in the Ashtanga way, you're going to think chin towards your shin, nose towards your front big toe. So instead of really rounding your spine, you're really trying to lengthen, especially through your low back. Now, for the Bikram way, you're thinking rounding your spine, forehead towards your knee. So kind of a big round in your spine, actually. Tuck your chin in towards your chest and round. Now, there's plenty of other lineages of yoga as well. These are the two I'm probably most familiar with, and I like to kind of teach a combination of these. So I do want you to find that length through your low back and really fold over your left leg. But for a lot of us, thinking nose towards the big toe is really not accessible. So once you feel you've reached that space where you've reached your maximum fold, then go ahead and drop your head. That way you're kind of getting the best of both worlds. You're getting a nice rounding in your spine. You don't have to hold your head up, but you're also lengthening through your low back quite a bit. Once you're down here, I want you to think about squeezing your legs, constantly squaring the hips forward. So you think about kind of driving right hip forward, tugging left hip back. I like to almost envision like you're trying to drag your heels towards each other. Obviously, I mean, maybe I could do that, but I don't think I can do that in this position. But you want to think that like the heels are magnetized towards each other and you're really trying to combine them at center. All right, let's go ahead and do the other side. So we're going to just spin on the heels to face the other side of the mat. Now the right foot is forward and the left toes are out at 45 degrees. Again, I like my feet on railroad tracks, but if the heel-to-heel alignment works better for you, by all means, go for it. Let's try reverse prayer hands for this time. So prayer hands behind you. If that doesn't work, you can always grab opposite elbows and get the same idea. All right, I'm having a little bit of an arch in my back, but I'm going to try to minimize that. More of an arch in the upper back, actually, like pressing the hands in towards the heart space so my chest is expanding. Feels pretty nice. All right, take an inhale. Micro bend your front knee as you start to hinge and fold. Prayer hands behind you means you have to use your legs a lot more. Press the ball of your front foot down and the outer edge of your back foot down. Pull your belly button up and in. Lift your pelvic floor and feel a gentle twist over your right thigh. Now here, I'm kind of doing mostly the Ashtanga way, as in my hands are in the correct position and I can't really fold too much here. I'm thinking more nose towards my big toe, but if I were to release my hands, then I can fold a little bit further. And I want to constantly drive this left hip forward and feel like I'm tugging the right femur bone back into the right hip socket. Now, as you do this, you're continuing to press the ball of your right foot down. You're feeling a really big length through the back of that right leg. Shoulders away from ears. Squeeze your legs, firm your thighs. Notice if your toes are really grippy, try to press more through the balls of your feet and the outer edges. And slowly come back up. All right, let's go ahead and get into this from more of a runner's lunge position. We do this a lot when in my vinyasa classes, I generally teach more from like this low lunge position because it's a little bit easier if you're newer. I also just think it's easier to find the fold when you're already halfway down. So we're gonna start in this runner's lunge. Now I'm gonna have you bump your back foot up. Let's do the left side again. Left foot forward, starting in a runner's lunge. Bump your right foot up so your stance is about 3 feet or a meter. Now my hands are already almost in the correct position. I might just want to readjust my hips. So I want to think right hip a little forward, left hip a little back, and a fold over the left leg. A little bit of a twist of your torso. So think about this right side body, right armpit dropping as I'm folding over the left leg. Now I can continue to walk the hands forward. I could walk the hands back. Can always use blocks. Squeezing legs. And release. Let's go ahead and switch. So right foot forward, runner's lunge. You have a nice big bend in your right knee. Now I'm already up on my fingertips. I'm just going to shorten the stance about 3 feet or a meter. I'm pretty much in my correct setup, just adjusting the hips and finding that little turn of my torso over the right leg. Press the ball of the right foot down, outer edge of the left foot down. Whatever I want to do with the arms, trying to find some length through the waist if I'm walking my hands forward, or a little bit more length through my neck and spine if I walk the hands back. And release. All right, that is pyramid pose. If you have any questions, feel free to let me know in the comments. And if you have any other favorite cues, I'm always open to hearing those as well and making my teaching more accessible and easier to understand. Thank you so much for watching, and look out for next week's video, something very similar to this.